Hey, and there we go. We got the intro video again. I like that intro video. I'm hoping it's working. I hope you can all hear it. Because in OBS, of course, if you play a video back, you can't hear it yourself, which is rather frustrating. Anyway, welcome to CodeZone, looking at the number 55. It's going well. We've got a few people here already. We've got Magetsub, Standard Int, Dragoneye, Nanoic, Bixie. Very good. I dialed down the volume a little bit. I know Bixie will shout at me later for that. We need to increase the length of the theme tune. Should we just eventually turn the entire code zone into 1 hour of the theme tune? I think that might be the way you're planning with this. Anyway, tonight, interesting stuff. As you can see, I'm dazzling you all with a OneNote because I'm going to talk about and finally put the nail in the coffin of tile selection. We've done enough episodes on this, but I've been actually working away, a busy little beaver trying to sort these things out. We need to... Oh, hello, Apostolisk. Hello, I've not seen you in ages. Hi. Well, at least longer than the ads. Yeah, I suppose it does need to be a bit longer than the ads. Good evening, Pliskit. Right, so yes, why have I got OneNote? Why have I got my pen? Why am I taking a risk that the drawing tablet doesn't work? Let's have a look. We've been talking about tile selection. And I just wanted to sort of draw on the screen what we're meaning by this. So we have lots of things now in our editor. One of these things specifically is called a static tile source. Now we worked on it a few weeks ago, but we never really did anything with it. And I kind of want to explain what the thinking is of a static tile source. Dr. Oreo, hello, how am I doing today? I am much better than I was last week. As you can probably tell, I can breathe through my nasal passages. It's all very good. And so we have this static tile source, and the idea is when you load up a tile sheet, this will be the sort of palette that you can select from. And we can, of course, select individual tiles, but more likely, more useful, more entertaining, more enjoyable is that you can select patterns of tiles. And that's why I wanted the selection tools to be quite robust. And so here you would have a sprite sheet filled with all of your bits and pieces of buildings and things, and you'd want to sort of coalesce them together in a larger, in one of the main editors. And we need also selection for actually in the main editor, not to select stuff, although that's one of the reasons, but to act as a mask, because I think masking is quite useful too. And so we've got this sort of similar properties all over the place, excellent candidate for reuse, and we started to look at tile selection as a principle. I'm going to quickly glance over at some of the chats. Ziggy, hello. Speedy, hello. Charnel, hello. Standard, it's the box isn't a line to the grid. Yes, I know. I remember once in one video I said something like, and if I take this circle, and people actually complained. That drove people nuts. I can't remember which one that was now. Anyway, so what we're going to represent is a set of tiles, and we briefly hinted at what this was last time, but it's fleshed out a bit now, and I'll walk through the code and we'll show some demonstrations of it in action too. But in principle, what we're going to have is something called a root tile, which I'm going to give the coordinates 0, 0. And everything that was in the set of selected tiles is actually just an integer coordinate pair of selected things relative to that root. So this one would be 0, minus 1. We're of course assuming that 0, 0 is top left here. This one would be plus 1, minus 1, and this one would be 2, comma, minus 2, and this one would be 1, 2, 3, 3, comma, 0. So we actually store a set of these sort of relative tile locations, and there's good reasoning for this. And it's a shame Jelly's not here, because it was actually him that sort of got this going. Is once you've set up a selection, how do you move it around? And so the idea of a root tile is quite nice, because then I can move this selection around everywhere and the rest of the selection will just follow it with no effort. Dragoneye, yes, exactly. Well, I guess people do get upset over the silliest things. So that's what we're looking at with our set. We talked about where we hashed with standard hash the OLC VI2D type. I'll get there, VI2D. And so we can add all of these into the set. We just throw them in there. And the nice thing is you can throw in duplicates. You don't need to check for them because the set will reject them all. And we can have them sort of any size, anywhere. It's a nice way to think about doing it. And I know that it came up a couple of times. Firstly by Standard Int, and it was 2 weeks ago. Why are we not just using an array to do this? Well, at the time I was sort of fumbling for the right thought to express myself. The simple answer is it's a sparse representation of the matrix, and so that allows us to have the efficiencies that go with that. It's not always the most suitable solution, but it's not a bad one. Johnny, hello, yes. Good. It's good to see that the community's sort of the regulars are turning up, because I try to sort of keep going with the regulars. It's good that we can keep these sort of threads of discussion going on. So it's nice to see some regular people. Good. Oh, by the way, if anybody's interested, I'm now on Blue Sky, whatever that is. Thank you, Nanoic, for the invite. I have 0 followers, and there's literally nothing going on there. So, yeah, there's always that. I'm obviously still on the regular twits as well. Oh, it's not twits anymore, is it? It's X, whatever it is. So let's get rid of the embezzlement and instead look at some code. And I think we just sort of started to touch on this tile selection in the previous video. And it's now finished. So this is a nice class. This is a proper computer science studies algorithm class. This one is good. I'll zoom in a little bit so we can all see. And put my pen down too. There might be some weebs in there. I think there's definitely some weebs on there. Yeah, you might like it quite a bit, Siggy, actually. So I have a class called a tile selection, but fundamentally the crucial bit in here is this. This is the standard unordered set of our selected tiles. I've also defined now some extents to that set. So I do actually have a sort of a maximum area or a region of interest, which is what I'm trying to capture. And there is the root pos, and they're all as integers. There's no additional information. By virtue of this coordinate being in the set, that means it's there. It's kind of sorted. I don't need to have any linkages there. And that might be some of the things that we look at later on tonight. Hello, I would request a close analysis of my name. Vam3 _14 RE. Oh, I get it. Oh, vampire. Yeah, that's very clever. Yeah. Do you have fake plastic teeth and wear white faces? And yes, you do have fake plastic teeth. Excellent. Oh, good. Well, whatever floats your boat, I suppose. Missed a fair bit of precision there in your vampirism. So yes, I have this sort of extent, and I can set it's just setters and getters. That's why it's really sort of computer sciencey. But there's some nice, interesting algorithms in here. And rather than looking through all of these different functions, we'll just quickly go and look at some of the implementations, because I like stuff like this. When it starts to sort of write itself, you know things are kind of cool. So we'll come back to that one. That one's a bit complicated, but let's have a look at something basic. If we wanted to select all the tiles, then I just call this region function. Let's go and have a look at region. Where's region? Region just iterates through double loop and adds all of the tiles to the set. It just adds those coordinates based on some offset, which was the top corner. So that's quite nice. Once we've got our add fundamentally there it is, add does this check against the region of interest, and you'll start to see some little creative edge cases going on here. This is because, and it's easier to demonstrate with the mouse later, I want to be able to reset the root dynamically depending on the context that the user's doing things in. So reset root is a flag that's in here. You'll see why that's relevant later on. And I just simply add that tile to the set. Now, to remove things from the set, easy enough. Is something in the set, easy enough. If we want to get the set of absolute tiles, so this is actually not the relative positions, this is already transforming the relative positions of all of the things stored in the set into a vector of all of those locations. Then I create the vector of the specific size of the set, and I transform my set using standard transform. That's pretty swanky, huh? I transform my set into the vector by passing in this lambda function, and that's where I'm doing this offset. So remember, everything in the set is stored as a relative coordinate pair, but if I add that to the root position, I can work out its absolute location. And using this standard transform is just a flashy way of doing that all in one hit, really. It basically counts as one line, right? Even though it's on 5. Let's have a look at... oh, Johnny, hi Javid. How do you go about creating the architecture for your programs? Have you not realised something yet, Johnny? That there is no plan. We just sort of throw it at the screen and see what sticks, and some of it does and some of it doesn't. And as you can see, this is growing arms and legs, this project now. This is a big project now. Default destructor, please. Oh, do I not? Have I not put one on? I thought I did. Oh, you want to do equals default destructor? Okay. Oh, hang on, I can't pronounce that one. Does the lambda need to capture everything by reference, or not just? It probably doesn't. It's just because it's a lambda inside a class. It just gets a little bit fiddly. I can't quite remember what the syntax is, but it really doesn't matter in this instance. There's no performance being paid here. Next one, I did actually, yeah, if you want, the only thing it's actually interested in capturing is the root pos variable. I think if you add that, because it's a class, you've got to include a this in the appropriate place, and I can't quite remember. No doubt somebody will jump in. You see, Johnny, no planning on this at all. So once we've worked out that, we've transformed our set into a vector. We've now got these absolute coordinates. Yeah, I thought that would work too. That just captures the whole class, right? I wanted to sort of specifically narrow it down. Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Exactly, or just ampersand. It really doesn't matter in this instance. That's fine. Oh, Morris is here. Hey, Morris. And first time chat. Yeah, don't be put off by my sort of answers that are inconclusive. That's just a regular thing. That's the difference between the YouTube channel and the Twitch channel. The YouTube channel, I can't answer questions. It's beautiful. Right, so getting the relative set is just returning the set. Right, invert. This is an important one because you sometimes make a selection. You want to select everything you've not selected. It might be easier or whatever to draw the selection. Well, to do this, I create a temporary set. So I copy the existing selection. So then I go and create a temporary set of everything, and that's why I need this extent size. So I get the size of the whole rectangle. And then I iterate through my copied set here and remove all of those items from this entire set of everything. So this can be a very large set once you've done an invert, and we slowly just chip away at it one by one. Yeah, that's what I mean. So it starts to look a bit miserable, that doesn't it? I'm by the way, slight diversion. I'm learning Kotlin at the moment, and yeah, I think I'm developing a bit of a love-hate relationship with it. The syntax is awful. It's really bad. So let's have a look now. So I've got two sort of binary morphological operations going on: dilate and erode, and I've talked about those at length before. But dilate effectively inflates a selected area by a 1 pixel boundary, and that's easy enough. I just iterate through every tile in my selection, in my set, and then I simply add its immediate neighbours. I don't even double check to see if they already exist in the set, because the set will do that for me. I just throw the coordinates at it and say, there we are. Erode is a bit trickier, because one man's erode is another man's dilate. I'm sure I've said that before. To do an erode, I can just invert, dilate, and invert. I could go and write code to go and do some clever manipulation of that. But again, we talked about this in the last episode. It's just GUI stuff. Speed is not critical here. Clarity and speed of writing code is more important. So that's what let's have a look. Magetsu, can't you just clear it? Can't I just clear what? The set? No. No, you mean for inversion? No, because then I have to add everything that doesn't exist. Yeah, I can't do that, right? Because I need to have everything in the set to begin with. Because I need everything that's not selected. It's a bit tricky. Londo, hello, evening, guys. No, we're good, actually. Feeling good, writing some set code. But anyway, we got that far. That was all very exciting. We did sets. And I'll show you what the end result is, because we started to look at some GUI bits as well, to how do we interact with it. Let's just get clicking. Let's see what happens. Right, so I'm going to inflate this window. There we are. See, inflate, you can tell the Android dev stuff is kicking in, can't you? Now, here I have my layer, and it looks all grayed out. And at the moment, it's in sort of a selection mode. F. Calvario, I'll remember that one. And Boninu. I like that, Boninu. We should use numbers in our names more often. So this is a selection, and I can click, and there we go. We've got our marching ants. We talked about that last time, and that's all very well. And I can click anywhere. And because I'm not clicking and dragging, it's just selecting that cell. If I click and hold the mouse button, I can drag. I'm selecting an area. And this is why I needed this reset root function earlier on. Because now if I click and drag over here, it selects there. If I click and drag backwards and forwards and whatever. One of the advantages of having sort of a selection by area is, of course, most of your stuff will be rectangular. But if I hold down the control key, I can add more to the selection too. And this is quite nice, but the root of the selection is always where you start doing the selection. Now, I can change things with the modes here. So let's go into here and clear all of our selection. I'm now in paint mode. So this is a bit different. So paint mode doesn't require me to hold down any keys. I can very precisely select the things that I want. So if I've got a slightly more elaborate shape in my sprite sheet, I can go ahead and do that. And I can erase them by holding the control key. If I choose to, any selection I've got, if I choose to dilate it, I can make everything one pixel bigger, which is quite nice. And I can choose to erode that. Now, erode doesn't necessarily always mean it'll go back to the shape that it was, but it's not far off. This is a 4 neighbor erode and dilate. I might add 9 neighbor erodes and dilates as well at some point, but don't know about that yet. And if you hold down shift in either paint or region mode, so region mode was the one we can draw the rectangles. Let's draw a region down here. If you hold down shift, you can pick it up anywhere and you can start to pan it around. Now this is the selection that's panning around, not what has been selected. And I thought it would be nice that if we go sort of out of bounds, it gets drawn as, well, as you can see, this sort of red mask here. So we've now got quite, oh, can you invert the selection? Yes, selection, invert. Ta-da! See? And go back, selection, invert. Right, so, and of course that now means we can move around, but don't forget everything's selected. So there you go to see it is sort of a genuine sort of mask. You can play games by moving this around and then sort of doing a bit of a dilation. So if I go here and dilate, see it grows, but only grows within the region of interest, which I thought might actually be quite useful. So you can end up with selection sizes which are larger than the tile array that you're targeting. At the moment, I can't really think of a use for that, but it does show that there's really no relationship between the selected cells and sort of the environment that's being drawn in. And that's very important because a lot of the time we won't have equality between our sprite sheets and our levels. Can you select everything by inverting an empty selection? Oh, okay, let's have a look. So let's clear all. So if I go select, invert, yes. So that selects, oh, hang on. Let's go to, let me try that again. Select, invert, and if I hold down shift, we can see what the whole selection was. Yeah. So logically, it kind of just behaves the way you wanted it to. And I want it to be sort of fluid and not require too many mouse clicks. And the only key combinations are control and shift to do anything, and left mouse button. I'm using middle mouse button for pans and zooms. And as I always like to show it off, everything also works in kind of like rotated mode too. So I can actually draw regions. This is one of the things, if you draw a region and go back on itself, it kind of flood fills the region. So you can't sort of like go back like that. You can on the first go, but if you start adding additional regions, it's not smart enough to know. Maybe that's something I can add. I think that's not something I'm going to worry about too much. What's the max size? Well, theoretically, the max size of the selection is bounded by regular signed 32-bit integer coordinates, so it could be huge. But the size of the sprite sheets, it's large, right? As long as it can be loaded as a single texture onto a GPU, you'll be all right. And certainly I've got some sprite sheets which are a couple of thousand by a couple of thousand and not had any issues at all. Tinwee123, hello. You should have some sort of optional wrap at the edge. Yeah, he says you're just making life difficult, I guess. Okay, so we have selection, which is cool, right? I like that. Now, when we're in our layered construct mode like this, the selection, I don't really know what its purpose is going to be, but fundamentally, it will be used to apply masks. So if you create an area like this, anything that we attempt to draw into this area will only apply into the selected area. So most of the time, this is going to be in select all. And yes, I know I'm not drawing the boundary of my tiles here. But I added some additional stuff. I wanted to flesh out static tile source a bit because we kind of created it and then never used it. And I wanted to show now how things are starting to come together. I can't paint anything yet, but I can start to demonstrate why have we gone through all of these hurdles to get this far. And so what I'm going to do is create, add another static tile source. I'm going to create two. There we go. I've not named them yet, but I'm going to need to load some assets as well. So let's go to our asset pack, and we'll create. We'll add a couple of assets to this. There we go. Assets, and I'll load up my arcade sprite here. Yeah, that's a nice one. Let's actually go and flesh this out a little bit. Well, let's add another asset to begin with. And I'm deliberately sort of hesitant to choose one which isn't square because we'll start to see a few bits of odd artifacts later on. So I'm going to choose one which is square, which is probably better in... I need to think, well, let's go and pick something people are familiar with. If I go to here, Humble Bundle, and go to... let's pick Super Mario. Yeah, so we've got this is the Super Mario World on the SNES. Let's go and flesh these out a little bit now by turning them into static tile sources. So I'll go down to select this static tile source, which currently is blank. And if we need to assign that an asset, so we looked at how do we do that. So let's make this one first, and we'll go and set these tile sizes appropriately. Expand it down here. Hopefully you can see just behind this chat the stuff that I'm doing. So we'll go and increase that to, these are 32 by 32 pixels, I think. 32 by 32, and how many are there? Let's go and cover the whole map. Now, at the moment, I'm not serializing very much either, so that's why it's a bit frustrating. I kind of have to do these things each time. I can't remember if we actually did serialize this. And I'm going to go to my other static tile source, and I'm going to load up the... I'll select that one, no, and load up the Super Mario World sprite sheet. There we go. These looks like it's 16 by 16 already by the looks of it. We just need more tiles. That's good. Have a look, and all the way down. Can't remember how far it goes. Right. Just in case, I am actually going to save these. I wonder if I can change the names. I don't know what goes on. So let's choose Super Mario for the... I can't remember how far we got. Oh, it changed the name of the tab up there. That's good. Didn't change it in here. And this one is... What was it? Arcade Objects. Oh. Put the focus in the right place. Arcade Objects. Very nice. And remember, everything is designed to be sort of fluid. You don't have to sort of... none of this is required. It's just everything should just try and change. I'm still working on this tree. We'll get there in a minute. Right, so why have I done this? Well, what I can do now is take my Super Mario palette and bring it over here. And I can bring... I don't need my asset pack, and I can bring my Arcade Objects palette and bring that over here too. And let's move this window over a bit and go to the layer, the stuff that I'm editing. So over here now, I have two palettes of tiles. And what I can try and do is I can select a tile in here, and you can see a yellow cursor has appeared on here. Now, I can't paint at the moment, which is rather frustrating, but what I'd like to demonstrate is if I choose, let's say, region select, and this one, region mode, we're in region mode, and select a pipe, you can see it's actually gone to the right size for things over here, which is quite nice. And we'll have a look at how this transaction has happened. So we could, in theory, now click, 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 and draw lots of pipes. If we had something a bit more complex, like this one, where you've got bits of pipe, we can, let's just clear the selection, zoom in a bit so I don't click on the wrong things. Paint mode, yeah, that's fine. Select all of the tiles that are relevant. There we go. And you can see the shape actually follows whatever we've selected. Now, we could leave that there. Let's say we're down in using a different sprite sheet and we had something that was a different shape. Right? So let's say this one was, I don't know, something like this. Yeah, something awkward. I can now see it's automatically updated it to being the right shape. And so if I paint it in here, it knows the source object, it knows the shape, knows where to put it. If I want to go back to that one, just move the mouse over it and bring it back. See? Nice, huh? So I can have multiple static image sources with different profiles of shape to then just go and stamp these things into the level. And don't forget, we can have multiple layers on here too. So whichever layer ends up being selected in the layer construct. At the moment, we've only got the facility for one. So let's go and have a look now at behind the scenes at how some of this is implemented, because we're going to jump into WX Widgets event land again too. Yeah, I'm pretty pleased with that. I think this is a nice feature. Let's see if I go on here, select and dilate to select everything around it. You can see the shape follows. And of course you can have multiple of these windows all stacked up depending on how you want to create your level environment. I tend to think you only really have one or two sprite sheets in a lot of 2D games, so hopefully there's enough screen real estate to make good use of that. I'm probably going to have some additional tooling going along the logs. One of the things we've not got at the moment is I haven't got anything to differentiate between selection and painting, and that was potentially something I was going to work on tonight, but we'll see. Seems good if there are different sprite sheets for each frame. Yeah, you can have the same sprite sheet as well. So if you find that you wanted to have two selections within the same sheet, you can actually load it up twice, which I think is also quite useful. What else did I want to say about this? There was something Channel's thrown me there. Yeah, sounds to me like you need a menu to switch between painting and selection. Well, that's what we were discussing at the very end of the last episode. We threw up some GUI stuff up here at the top. I've taken that out momentarily, but that's, yeah, I'm going to have like a rudimentary tool set going along that and what kind of mode you're operating in for editing. For tile stuff, it's actually pretty simple, but later on for all the geometry stuff, it's going to be quite verbose. There was something important I was going to say. Oh, animated tiles. So this is deliberately a static tile source. It is not intended to have any kind of movement associated with it. Or animated frames or anything like that. It is just going to be really dumb and copy tiles into the location. Got to start somewhere, so let's start with the real simple stuff. I did also think that maybe a subset of static tile source could be predefined objects and shapes. So they could pop up in some sort of list alongside here. So instead of having to select the thing again, you could just select angled pipe or coin one or something with a name, which might be a bit more meaningful to your application. I'm probably going to do that, but I've just not got around to doing that just yet. Right, I'm just going to have a quick glug. So a lot of things have started to come together. Now we've got the different panels of the window, we've got selections talking to each other, we've got project structure, we've got properties. You know, this is why the project is growing arms and legs. I also know that the selection stuff is far too dark. I don't know why I've settled on it being this dark, but right now it gives me visibility just for quick debugging and tests. I'm going to try and save this, but I don't think it's going to load. We'll see what happens. So let's just go and overwrite It's one of these. Where's it gone? That one. Because I think we're going to need to load up this information again and again and again. So let's close down and let's just see what happens when I load that, because I don't think it does load things properly. Workspace, open, no, that one. We shall see what's it actually, because I don't think it creates a layered construct, which means I can't actually select anything. That's not a fault of the loader. It's actually loaded the static tile sources, so that's quite convenient. But it hasn't loaded a layered construct with any content, and that's why it's. I need to get that implemented. Yeah, it's clear, Magetsu. That's right. It's clear to the point of it excludes everything you might actually want to select. I think we'll just dial it back a bit with the transparency. So what do we look at next? We've looked at the selections. Right, I had to do a bit of refactoring because I realised that I've got selections all over the place here, and I want to reuse it. So I created an adapter class. It's not strictly an adapter class in the computer science sense, but let's have a look at what it's doing and why it's important. Right, the adapter class is like a tool which allows me to handle mouse events in such a way that I can select tiles. It also handles the rendering of the selection boundary. We moved it all into a separate class, if you remember, a separate window class last time. I actually had to move it again into this tile adapter, it just makes it easy reusable, and we'll see why. So actually most of this code you saw last time. So this was how we chose the selections and how we drew it. I should also remember to get to draw the root selected tile as well. So nothing new here, right? But it's just in a different place. And it handles the modes now as well. So whether we're in paint mode or region mode, sorted some of that out too. So yeah, nothing new there, but you need to know it exists, because if I now go over to the editor, if you recall, we had everything in our editor layered construct class. That's no longer the case. In fact, we took a large chunk of it out in the last episode. It was all that tile stuff. Then we broke it down into the actual editor component itself. So this is the window that allows the user to edit things. It exists within that top level editor window, and it had the pointer to the construction, pointer to the workspace, and it now has a pointer to tiles. Where this is the tile adapter class. So it has this adapter class doesn't have. It's not a GUI component. That's the important thing to remember. It's just a tool which can work with some various properties within a class that it's included within. Should be software and game developer. You are the 6th most watched stream in science and tech. Yeah, good. I don't know. We don't really do any like software development on this channel, do we? We just stare at the code and it just starts to work. So why did I need this adapter class? The reason fundamentally is right now we're working with tiles, but this editor isn't restricted to tiles, and later on when we're adding different types of layer, geometry layers and things, I'm going to have a geometry adapter class. So I can use the same, because I know which layer I'm working on, I can selectively choose how I process the mouse inputs and how I process that information. So I needed that level of distinction. I couldn't oop my way out of that one. So this is sort of adding an additional layer of tooling, but given there's only 2 types that I envisage, I think I can get away with it. So what else changed here? Something just stuck in my head then that was an important change, which I've missed. Everything. Yes, the actual tiles. Let's go and have a look at what a tile is. So if you recall, we have a special container called a tile container. This is a template class, so the tile container just behaves with any type that is tiles, and we've been looking at it with this Boolean implementation prior to today. But I've also now got this static tile implementation. And if I go to tile layer, I need to work out where I've put this. I have some sort of definition of a static tile. This is in flux. This could change because it's a bit undecided. But let's have a look at what this might be. Firstly, it includes an image asset link. Now, it's been a long time since we've looked at an image asset link, but that's the token that binds sort of the static image source within the hierarchy and the framework of the entire editor. So instead of just having an index into a vector of images, there's actually additional information in here which tells me how to manipulate that particular image. I'm also going to store, at the moment, for no better reason than I might need them, the position of some point within that image, a size, so we can select a small rectangular region. And I thought, well, index. It wouldn't be one encoder without y times width plus x, and its inverse. And so that's what we're looking at doing with that. So at the moment, as I say, this is completely undefined, but the nice thing is, because it is just a template class, all I needed to implement was the constructor. There we are with the template. So we've got a specialism for the static tile, and all that is doing is fleshing out my sort of vector of tile data with the appropriate sort of null beginnings. Now remember, this image asset link actually was pretty sophisticated by my standards and used a standard optional to see if the image actually exists or not. We don't do science or tech either. Yeah, I have no idea. We blast theme tunes out periodically, that's too. Y times size plus x. Yeah, it's something that's used a lot around here, isn't it? The other specialism was, of course, to get the tile to draw itself, and this is utterly untested because I haven't got this far. And it actually starts to show just how sort of sophisticated things are becoming, and sophisticated means impenetrably complicated. So what have we got here? Well, we've got the static tile specialism being drawn. The draw tile needs a pointer to the workspace now. That's kind of a new addition, which we didn't have before. It needs a pointer to the workspace because it'll get this image asset token, but it needs access to the image assets, and they're only stored within the workspace. It's optional because I kind of felt that made things a little bit more fluid, so that's why I have to do a quick check to see does the actual have a value. And this lump of horrible code here will disappear. This is effectively, to those that know, draw partial sprite, and more realistically, this is draw partial decal in the Pixel Game Engine. I don't have a draw partial decal in Pixel Game Engine 3 just yet, so I've sort of manually bodged one together. It's utterly untested, and hopefully we might maybe be able to get something up and running. We'll have a look. Yeah, the inverse is strange, isn't it, that the inverse function needs a modulus? I find modulus a very intriguing thing. To me, it kind of sort of demonstrates that maths is broken, but there we go. That's a discussion for some much later at night, I think, in the voice chat when we're playing golf next time. So hopefully, if we get to the point where we can take our image asset links, we can take our set of selections, I should be able to start drawing image tiles. But I've not gotten that far yet. In fact, I only got the selection stuff finished literally about 5 minutes before I started this stream. So I was surprised most of it worked and compiled. Now, let's go and have a look at what is actually happening with the selection stuff. Because there's an important sort of path we need to follow. Our selections are going to, we assume when we're working with tiles, that static tile sources, the clues in the name, source will elicit events about selection. The only thing that consumes events about selection is the main fundamental editor. So what's quite nice about this is we can go and create a special event in WX widget speak called a what have I called it here? Event tile source. The only thing this needs to do is tell something that the set that's been selected has changed, and the particular source for that window. So we could have many different static tile sources on the screen. Which one, in this case, which p source window, is the one that has changed. So it's a very simple event. It's a very simple event, but then we need to go and contaminate it with all of this WX widgets BS. So we create our macros, we declare them. We actually looked at doing this for the navigable panels way back when. And we can go, after you've gone through all of this rather verbose, meaty stuff, it does actually yield a fairly trivial way of binding to the event and handling it later on. So forget the implementation details of that. All that matters is I have created a custom event that leverages WX widgets called event static tile source selection change. And this event, all it stores really is the source window. In fact, I don't even think I need this because I think the event framework itself will actually handle that. But I've thrown it in just to make it. It's already typecast, so good. Oh, Alter is here. Hello, Alter. Good to see you. Holy Seraphimon. So in the editor static tile source class, what's going on? Well, I've exposed the actual tile selection just with a public method, because if this static tile source elicits an event that says I've changed my selection, something may need to go and get hold of that selection later on. And we can go and follow that through. So let's see what happens. At the moment, rather lazily, I'm throwing a selection change event on every mouse event, and this is really bad. I shouldn't do this. I will tidy this up before next time. I was just bodging this together to get it to work. This is poor because on mouse events happen per pixel. These are genuine operating system sort of mouse level events. The numbers that are returned are expressed in the world positions within the renderable panels, but nonetheless they're called far too often. Well, maybe not mouse left and mouse up, but certainly mouse move down here. So this needs to be related on tile-based movements, or else it's absolutely spamming the system with events. I will tidy that up. You've got a Pine Phone Pro. I think somebody has tried doing PG on a Pine phone. We'll have to ask Slavka. I don't know what the end. Yeah, there we go. Yes, thank you, Magetsu. I don't know what happened with that. I think it always comes down to touch inputs are not brilliant. Although our very own Johnny G63 has quite a sophisticated framework for using PG on mobile devices now. Johnny, I don't know if you missed this. I'm actually doing Kotlin development now. Yeah, I'm an Android dev now. That's my thing. What I'm saying here is we shouldn't be doing this on every mouse move, but for the time being, just to make sure it works, I am doing. So we'll get over that. Could just hook my mouse and keyboard up. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about using my phone as like a desktop PC. Us Kotlin devs don't think of it like that. Yeah, I found, well, the reason I did sort of Kotlin is you try. I used when Android. I'm going to tell you a little story. Why not? It's CodeZone. When Android first came out, everybody assumed iPhones were like the first sort of Palm phones that were there. I actually had, way before the iPhone came out, I was on the XDA bandwagon, so I had the Palm style phones with a little stylus, and it ran some really horrible version of Windows, and it was difficult to develop for, and it was a mess. And so when Android came out, I really jumped on it. I think my first phone, I'm going to get this number wrong, I'm sure it was 1.2, it might have been 1.6, and I jumped onto the Android. It was much simpler back then. I really just, I had 3D applications up and running. I was playing with all the sensors, the gyros. I wrote an application where I had my mobile phone tethered to the neck of my guitar. And I was using, because all this stuff wasn't available. So I was using the accelerometers in the phone to send MIDI signals via Bluetooth to my computer to change the effects in real time. So as I sort of lifted my guitar up for a solo, it would up the reverb, that sort of thing. And of course it had like a the touch screen on it itself. So that was also like an XY interface for controlling some sort of modulation panels. So the whole thing became this sort of MIDI thing. I was really into it. I thought, Android dev, it's easy, it's great. And a buddy of mine got together and we thought, you know what, let's do this. Let's make some apps. So we actually started to invest in doing this sort of thing. Life got in the way, as it always does, and we never materialized to anything. But I was pretty well versed in actually doing stuff on Android. And then I put it all to rest and got married and started a family and got a proper job and all that sort of thing. And recently at work, I've been thinking, oh, I'm going to go back to Android and do something, because I wanted a human-machine interface that's reasonably cheap. And started to jump into Android, and it's a mess. It's done the full Java mess thing. That, remember I made some videos about GUI programming for the YouTube channel, and it's just awful. It's terrible. The environment to work within, the learning curve is vertical. Everything, all the documentation doesn't quite add up properly, so it's a mishmash of like 4 different frameworks all being spludged together. And I thought, you know what, if I'm going to do this, I need to do it right. I don't want to learn some sort of intermediate mess of Java and whatever Android framework I could barely remember at the time. So instead, I thought, let's do it right. Let's actually go through all the Kotlin stuff. Let's try and understand the Compose environment. And the Compose stuff is verbose, it's fiddly, but is kind of coming together. Let me just catch up with some of the chats. Alright, so we have some XDA fans, that's good. I had the XDA 2 and then the XDA 2S, I think. Kotlin's okay. What I'm struggling with so far is that I made a comment on the Discord. It seems like they had all these really cool ideas, but then they ran out of the syntax to express them. So it just starts to seem that the syntax gets a bit made up as they want to start doing these more complicated features, and that makes it a little bit difficult to read, I think. Like if you're making things complicated, no, Android's well up there. It was unreal. I consider myself a reasonably, no, I'm not going to say talented, but a reasonably competent computer programmer, and I've been around the block 1 or 2 times on these things, and I sat there for a good 2 weeks just trying to kludge together some app to sort of get the basic functionality of what I needed for work, and it was just awful. Everything was slow. The tools were always breaking. I actually had to buy a tablet because the emulation was just so poor. Yeah, didn't like it. Yeah, you see, Morris has kind of hit the nail on the head. Development's just awful. I don't know why any of us bother. Why don't we just like play games all the time? It'd be better, wouldn't it? We need some Elite game nights again. It has been a long time since we've played Elite. I'm a bit worried now. If I try to install Elite, it'll just be running around on islands. Right, anyway, what were we talking about? We were talking about sort of eliciting events. So let's go and have a look. So yeah, here I am. Here's my event. Event tile source. I've only got the one event, and all I do is set to the source window and post it to the parent. The parent of this particular window is a mainframe, which we've not looked at in a long time. Mainframe is the main application. It's the overall window. And I've created a function on here called onTileSourceSelectionChange. So this is the thing that will eventually receive that event. So let's go and have a look at what's going on there. Firstly, I'll just show you that it is true. It is actually the mainframe. There's not much goes on in the mainframe. It just handles sort of the main menu. It's been a long time since we've been here, but I've connected my custom event to it here. Connect the big long name and given it the function handler and the name of the function that's going to handle that event. So all of that verbose WX wizardry does actually yield a reasonably simple way of gluing things together. Let's go and have a look though at that function. So what does this function do? Well, it receives an event that some source window has changed its tiles. A tile selection. I just then need to go to every single editor interface in my application, and just through polymorphism, I just call the set tile selection. Most of them will ignore it. They don't care. But some of them might actually care and want to change their own rendering, which is what we saw when we looked at we changed the selection in the windows. It changed it in the main outputs, the main editor window. So this just really relays that single message to everything that might be interested that event has changed. If we go and have a look at the editor interface, so everything that we see with a tab inherits from this editor interface. We can see that it's got a set tile selection method, which again, it's just propagating the same set of information all the way through. Let's go and have a look at that. It does, yeah, it doesn't do anything by default because most of the things don't care, but our static tile source, sorry, not our static tile source, our layer editor does actually care. And it passes on the message. So we're following the path all the way through here. That passes on the message back to the editor. And all the editor does is store a copy of it. And that's quite important. So people think, oh, you're storing copies here and there. Actually, sometimes the right thing to do is store a copy. Because you can't really sort of reallocate a reference very easily or safely. Or it's bad practice too. And in this case, I'm quite happy for it to be a copy of the information because it doesn't then interfere with anything that's going on in the sources. Java and Python could go in. Yeah, that's never start. That's just not even starting. The only time I used Python, it memory leaked all over the place, and I was put off it. Yeah, and Dragonite, we know that you went and got 20 fleet carriers. You never shared any of them, though, did you? Have you updated to the latest FL Studio version? Piano source? No. Python scripting. I didn't know that. No, I haven't updated to it. I should do, though. So, after all of this, the interesting bit is when we get to where we're rendering our layers for the editing stuff. And there's lots of hard-coded numbers and things. And we have actually looked at this. There's nothing new here. But now's the time to start tidying up some of all this hard-coded. Fundamentally, I'm kind of happy that things are working the way they should. But it's now getting a little bit held together with sellotape and chewing gum and things. I want to render the selection. That's all I've got for now. I've not got a clever way of doing that. I envisage what I'll do is once you've got a selected tile source, that you'll see some sort of semi-translucent sort of indication of what you're going to paint. So you can kind of sort of get a preview of it before you actually apply it, because I think that's quite a nice thing to have. But right now, I just take the set of relative selected tiles, and because they're relative, I draw them relative to the cursor, and that's just all handled for me. So yeah, so actually drawing that selection, it boils down to one line of code, basically. And that's because we've taken the time to design this properly. I know we kind of laugh that we haven't designed anything, but in reality, I do. It's just sort of floating around in the back of my head. But this now is sort of a good indication that the system is beginning to write itself. The tools and the framework are robust enough in the background that I can use them reliably. And that's really the message I'm trying to emphasize. Why have we spent weeks doing all this really boring boilerplate? Well, we're getting there because we're getting to the exciting bits. We're getting to now actually painting and drawing shapes and maps. And then we can bring in the Lua scripting and do all of the exporting and all the stuff that I know people are really interested in seeing how it happens. But none of that's possible without a nice tool interface. I've had to create a blackjack simulator. Yeah, I can't believe that Python is actually still sort of the go-to machine learning environment either. Do you know what? I was an advocate against that. Those that might not know, my academic background is actually considerably machine learning, and I was responsible for writing programs to emulate convolutional neural networks. We take that for granted now. You look at these GPT services, it's basically that, but we never had the scale to do it on. So I used to write programs to sort of really, mostly in assembly language, trying to really leverage the power of the processor to just push neurons and synapses and emulations of sort of receptive fields and that kind of thing. And you go to the conferences, and I did, and you meet some of all the big players, and everybody's talking, oh yeah, we did this in Python and it took 3 hours and we did, and my sort of little niche in the world was I would take the algorithms that they used and I would implement them in assembly language and C++ and then just blow the rendering results out of the water. And because you'd be surprised, a lot of them came from MATLAB environments and bioinformatics environments, and so that Python was a step up for them. But yeah, that's a little bit of a a little bit of a plug there. Always satisfying when you're writing the immediate language. Yeah, exactly. I think you're right, Chandler. There becomes sort of that tipping point in any project where it just starts gaining its own momentum. And if you've done it right, you can get that momentum to last a long time. When that momentum starts to lose a bit of steam, that's usually an indication that your design has gone in the wrong direction again. Everyone decided Python was the teaching language. Yeah. You all know my thoughts on Python. I don't believe white space should be semantic. It's literally nothing. How can nothing have meaning? There's a fundamental flaw there. Right, so let's go back to actually just running some of this, because I'm sure there's probably a few different members looking at what's going on. Oh, well, actually I can't, can I? Because we can't load things. I don't want to. Why can't I load stuff? Maybe we should go and try and add in. Well, I'll tell you what we can do. We can add another static tile source. Resource, add static tile source. There we go. Don't know why it's added two things there. Must be a bit of a bug. Let's drag that one over there. Let's drag this one over here. Let's make this window a bit smaller. Let's bring over our editing window. So we've now got our two sources and we can have selections in here. So let's do this one like that and we'll have another bit of a shape there. Fundamentally, our selection has appeared in our editor. And if we go into paint mode in this one, we can have a more elaborate shape, which I can sort of pick the pieces out. And the shape appears again in our editor. And if I want this one, I just go up there. And if I want this one, I just go down there. And I think this will yield quite fast editing of complicated sprite sheets. VB6 was good. Do you know what? Actually, VB6 was good. VB5 was better. Yeah, Channel, I don't know what it is with you and R. You're like the only person in the world using R. There's literally nobody to collaborate with. I think I had VB6 came on like 3 floppy disks, didn't it? Oh, VBA doesn't count, DragonEye. That's not programming. Right. Well, I think that's. I'm not going to sort of labour the point. That might actually not be a bad place to draw today to a close, because we actually got through. It's been quite dense today, hasn't it? It's got through a lot. But the selection done. I'm pretty pleased with that. I'm going to go here and select the inverse of that, and you see, it's just all kind of clicks into place. I quite like it. What doesn't count as program? VBA. Thank you, Johnny. Right, I had no volunteers to animate an intro for Bixie's wonderful theme tune, so I'm guessing we're sticking with the default one for a little bit. So I'm going to go and play that as the outro. So hopefully we'll be here this time next week. I'm going to be hanging around on the Discord server for a little bit. I've actually got a YouTube video in the works, so that might be popping up soon. So thank you all for the follows, thank you all for the subs, and I'll see you next time. Take care.